Now we are front probing the last two network, which is pin 66 and pin 68. Now, what I have noticed off camera is that when I quickly looked at the lab scope, we have no activity over here. Now, I wonder if this network is being used. A lot of these TCMs usually have two networks. There's CAN 1 and CAN 2. Although we have more than one over here, I don't think all of them are being used. They're probably just using two. One is good, but the other one that we looked at, there's activity on one line and then there's no activity on the other line. So we need to figure out why there's no activity on that other line. Okay, so which was this one, the one I just circled. I hope you can see that. So 26 and 28. So we're gonna go back to it. So let's see where pin 26 and 28 is. So let's flip it over. So these two are right here. Okay, now let's look at the lab scope now. So as you can see, we have activity on one trace, but the other trace is straight. Okay, now the question is, do we have a short on this trace? I don't think so, because we have a voltage of 0.01 volt on the green trace. This trace was gonna mirror this trace over here. So now what I'm gonna do is, let me turn the key off. I'm going to print out, I'm gonna print out the, as you can see now, our network is going to sleep. So I'm going to print out the network wiring diagram. Let's get the network wiring diagram printed out, and then we can trace down these communication wires. Or we could take a resistance measurement at the DLC connector to see what resistance we have on the network. Okay, we could do that too. So let me try to find the wiring first, and then we're gonna do a resistance measurement of the network system before we continue with testing the network. Okay, we need to figure out why this other line does not have voltage on it. So we've been chasing this for, you know, almost an hour and a half now, although we've been going back and forth between other stuff. So our TCM is receiving power and ground. Janelle is doing a good job here. We got good power, good ground at the TCM. Our communication wires on one network are good, but on the other network, we have voltage on one line, but the other line is flat. So first I thought we had a short on that line, but then usually when you have a short, you have 0, 0, not 0.01. So the next thing I kind of wanted to do is I wanted to print out the network wiring diagram, so we can go to each module and disconnect them and see if there's a module that's shorted and taking the network or half of the network down. But before we go that route, I want to take a resistance measurement at the DLC connector to see what resistance we have on the network, because this network should have two resistors, two 120 ohm resistors, and they are in parallel. And when you have two resistors in parallel that have a value of 120 ohms, you divide the value of one resistor by 2, okay? And that should be the total resistance of the network. So on a good network, we should have 60 ohms of resistance, especially on these old networks, okay? So now we're gonna go to the DLC connector and take our resistance measurement of the network at the DLC connector to see what resistance we have in the network. So now let's do that. So here is our DLC connector. Okay, this is our DLC connector pinout. So we have pin C and pin D over here, and these are our network pins. Okay, we're gonna connect our multimirror to these two pins to take a resistance measurement of the network. Okay, so we're gonna connect to D and C. Now, here is our DLC connector. It's hanging over here. The bracket up here broke. So we have D and C over here. So this is D and C. So I'm going to connect my test leads over here to these two over here. All right, so we are connected to the network. So now we're gonna turn on our multimeter. We have to be on the resistance scale. So bingo, this is the problem, guys. We have 125.8 ohms, which means that one resistor is open in this network. Okay, so we have to focus on this first. We have to bring this resistance down. So I believe there is a resistor in the network that's open. Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to find where our resistors are and then replace the resistors so we can bring this resistance down. If we bring the resistance down and our TCM is still not communicating, then at that point the problem is going to be the TCM. So let's focus on the resistance over here first. Now, the TCM is disconnected. There is a possibility that one of our terminating resistors is inside the TCM. So I'm going to go back outside the bus and reconnect the TCM and see if this value is going to come down. After reconnecting the TCM, if we still have 126 ohms in the network, then we're going to look up where these terminating resistors are so we can replace them. Hopefully they are external so we can replace them. Okay, so I'm gonna reconnect the TCM to see if this value is going to go down. I got the TCM reconnected. I don't know if one of our terminating resistors is inside the TCM. Now that we reconnected the TCM, let's go back to our multimeter and see what resistance we now have on the network. Now our resistance came down to 61.8 ohms. So we have a good resistance on the network. Our TCM is not talking. We have good power and good ground at the TCM. I'm going to back probe these two wires again. Remember, we had a flat line on CAN low over here at pin 27. Let's check this again with the TCM connected. If those communication lines are good, now that our resistance is now good, if the communication lines are good, then the problem is going to be the TCM. Okay, so I'm going to back probe these two communication wires again. Okay, because this one was good, but this one was flat. We didn't have any activity on this one. So I'm going to back probe this. We're going to watch the voltages on the lab scope screen. If everything looks good, we're going to go ahead and call for a new TCM. I'm going to get those back probed off camera and then I'll bring you guys back up. We are down to the last step of our diagnosis process. I'm back probing our communication wires. So this is the other network that we had on this TCM. We reconnected the TCM. Now we have a good resistance on the network, 60 ohms. So one of our terminating resistors is in the TCM. So now let's see if we're gonna have a good voltage waveform on these communication wires. If everything looks good on these communication wires, then we're gonna go ahead and replace this TCM. Because we already checked our powers and grounds, this TCM is receiving power and ground. So now I'm gonna go in the vehicle and turn the key on. Let's see what voltages we have on these wires. I'm gonna turn the key on. So the key is on the dash. I'm sorry for the buzzing noise. So we have voltage on our yellow trace, just like we had before. And now we have some activity on the green trace. And if you look at our voltages here, we have 4.90 volts on the green trace and 2.67 volts on the yellow trace. So this tells me that our communication lines are not open or shorted. Okay, so the other network is good. Now this could be this crappy looking waveform over here is probably because of the TCM being bad. Because right now, what do you think is causing the problem? We cannot communicate with this TCM. It's getting power and ground. Our communication lines are good, but it's still not talking. So the problem is a bad TCM. So I'm gonna filter these. Okay, our waveforms got a little bit cleaner, but these voltages over here, let me show you the wiring diagram again. So we have voltages on these two wires, so CAN high and CAN low, and this is the other network on this TCM. So this over here tells me that, you know, the wiring of the network is good. So at this point, what do? What is the problem, guys? Now I'm going to turn the key off. I know what's going on now. We can make a decision. I want you guys to guess what we have to do to fix this. Well, just like any computer, I said this earlier, for a computer to work, you need power and ground, and you also need your communication wires to be good. We checked our powers and grounds, our communication wires are good. It's still not working, so we're gonna have to replace the TCM on this. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the TCM. I mean, I'm 1000% sure about this. The wiring is good. We don't have an open wire. Our communication wires are good, so we're good to go. I'm gonna order a new TCM, and after I get a new TCM, I'll bring you guys back up so we can install it. And I'm sure after we install a new TCM on this bus, this is gonna be fixed. So I'll get a new TCM ordered, and then I'll bring you guys back up. A couple of days later, I received a package from Auto ECM. They did have this TCM in stock. So this TCM probably needs to be programmed. I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to install it first, and then we're gonna try to drive the bus and see if it's gonna shift properly. If it doesn't shift properly, we're gonna go ahead and get it programmed. Okay, I was trying to do some research. I read service info. It didn't mention if this TCM had to be programmed. I'm gonna plug it first. Once we plug this new one in, we should be able to communicate with it with our scan tool, and then we're gonna test drive the bus. If it doesn't shift well, we're gonna get it programmed. Okay, so, and I'm sure after we install this new TCM, we're gonna be able to talk to it with a scan tool, and our check engine light will no longer come on the dash. So now I'm going to remove this old TCM. I'm going to install this new TCM. So now I'm going to remove this TCM. We already tested this. We don't have a wiring issue. Our TCM is getting good power and good ground, and it's not talking. And I'm sure after we replace this TCM, the vehicle speed trouble code that we had is not gonna be on the engine computer anymore. Okay, so you just undo this bolt, and then after you undo this bolt, you pull out this connector, just like that. I'm gonna get it out of the way. So now I'm going to install our new TCM. All right, so now, before I connect the scan tool to the bus to see if we can talk to this TCM, I want to back probe our second communication wires. Let's see if the waveform that we just saw on the lab scope is going to be different with this new TCM, before we try to talk to it with the scan tool. So I'm going to bring up my test lead and I'm going to back probe pin 26 and 27, and this is our communication wires for the second network that we tested last time. Okay, now we're doing it with the new TCM. So now let's go in the bus and see what voltages we have on the lab scope screen before we start the bus. I'm going to turn the key on. We now have our new TCM installed in the bus. I'm going to turn the key on. So the key is on. So now let's look at our lab scope screen. So our waveform looks the same, okay? I don't see a difference between what we saw and this. Okay, so I don't know if that's supposed to look like that. You know, we're back probing pin 27 and 28. So, I mean, the TCM is new, it looks the same. So now let's see. Now I'm going to connect my diesel laptop to the bus to see if we can communicate with the TCM. I'm gonna get my scan tool connected to the bus and then I'll bring you guys back up. I got my diesel laptop connected to the bus. We have installed a new TCM on the bus. I am sorry for the buzzing noise. We probably gonna have to take this laptop back there, just like we did. Janelle, let's go back there. Let's walk away from the steering wheel. Hopefully the buzzer is not gonna be loud enough. Okay, so we're good here. So let's sit here and scan the TCM. So if we made the right call, we should be able to talk to the TCM now. Once again, I apologize for the buzzing noise in the background. All right, guys, the scan tool is done scanning all the control units on the vehicle. Now we can talk to the transmission control unit. Okay, before it was red with an X, now it's yellow, which means we can talk to it, but there is a trouble code in the TCM. Now this TCM is new. I believe it's gonna require programming. I did call the guys at Auto ECM to ask them if this TCM has to be programmed. They told me that it did not specify on the catalog. I'm going to drive the bus to see if it's gonna drive better. If it doesn't shift smoothly, then we're gonna have to program this TCM. Remember before, when I double clicked on automatic transmission, it said that this control unit did not respond. So now I'm gonna click on it. Let's see what happens. So now we're going into the TCM. So which tells me that we have made the right call. This bus needed a TCM. So no fault codes. TCM power input signal. So this is interesting. Let's clear this code. So it looks like this code is memorized and it's not being cleared, because usually when you clear the codes on these school bus using this diesel laptop, the triangle on the code turns green. This is not turning green. So, oh, there you go. It's now green.
Now it's okay.
Now it's okay, right? So it's now green. So that's good. Now let's back out. We can look at the data PIDs. Okay, these are our TCM data PIDs. Okay, we have a bunch of PIDs here. Okay, so that's good. Now let's back out and go into the engine computer. Remember, we had a vehicle speed trouble code in the engine computer. I'm gonna erase that also, because that vehicle speed trouble code in the engine computer was caused by the TCM that was not communicating. So let's go into the PCM and see what we got. Here's what we have in the engine computer. This is the code that we had before. And this triangle, remember, it was red. Now it's yellow because it's a memorized code. I'm going to erase it. Okay. This code was being caused by the TCM that was bad. After we clear that code, the triangle next to it should become green. And after that, we're gonna put everything back together and test drive the bus. We have erased this trouble code from the engine computer. As you can see, this triangle is now green, so we're good to go. So now I am going to put everything back together and start the bus. We're gonna test drive the bus and see what happens. Okay, so we are done. We made the right call. Let me turn the key off. We made the right call. This bus needed a TCM. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get these covers that are removed from the TCM electrical connector. Okay, so I'm gonna install these covers on the TCM electrical connector. I'm gonna mount it over here. Okay, nice and clean. We're gonna mount it here nicely. And after that, I'm gonna bring you guys back up so we can test drive the bus. I'm gonna do that off camera. This is pretty straightforward and pretty easy to do. I'm gonna mount it there. I'm gonna get the covers on, and then I'll bring you guys back up so we can take this bus on a test drive. I have installed the new TCM on the bus. Here it is. I broke this stud over here, but we have two more, one here and another one here. So the TCM is secured properly. Okay, we have one nut over here and there's another one here. So it's not going anywhere. Okay, so everything is back together. Now we're gonna close the hood. Perfect. So we're gonna close the hood and then we're gonna take this on a test drive. All right, so the hood is closed. Now I'm going to start the engine. The check engine light should now be off. So as you can hear, the engine is running. Actually, there's a light here that says check transmission. Interesting. So this TCM has to be programmed because you see this light over here. There's a light here that says check trans. Okay, so we need to figure out how we can find someone who can come program this TCM. Okay, actually, let's close the door. Let's see if we can take it for a quick spin. So we're now reversing, so that's good. Before, I couldn't go in reverse. So let's take this for a spin and see how it drives. And then I'm gonna figure out how we can find someone that can come and program this. I have a friend that usually comes to the shop to program these TCMs for me. So the buzzing sound that you hear is because of the TCM that's not programmed yet, because the check transmission light didn't go off. So for this check transmission light to go off, the TCM has to be programmed. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the engine. We test drove the vehicle. The vehicle seems to upshift and downshift properly, but we have this light over here that says check transmission, and this is why the buzzer is on. I'm going to have to find someone who can program this TCM for us. This TCM has to be programmed. We did the right diagnosis. The TCM was bad. We replaced it. Now the check engine light is no longer coming back, but the check transmission light is on, and we have a buzzer that's on right now. I'm gonna scan the TCM once again to see if we have a code that came back, but then after that I'm going to find someone who can come out here and program this TCM for us. Let's scan the TCM and see what we got. Let's see if we have any codes in the TCM. I'm going to turn off the engine. I'm gonna get the scan tool connected, and then I'll bring you guys back up. As you can see, our engine computer now is green and it has a check mark on it, but the transmission computer is yellow or orange with a triangle and a exclamation point. This is because there is probably a code in the TCM. So let's click on it and see what we got. We are inside the TCM. The first code is wrong gear 1 ratio. The second one is main pressure modulation solenoid, unknown error. Now, these codes can be because the transmission has to be programmed. Look at these codes. They're changing between not active to active. Or it could also be that we may have a defective solenoid inside the transmission. Now, I did check the solenoids off camera. I don't know if I mentioned it. I checked the solenoids inside the transmission to see if we have a shorted solenoid inside the transmission. All the solenoids checked out okay. I did a measurement test of all the shift solenoids in the transmission, so that was good. Okay, because when you replace a TCM, you have to make sure that there is no component that caused the TCM to go bad. Okay, because if you still have a problem in your output, it's gonna take down the new control unit. So I checked all the solenoids. The solenoids are good. So this over here is just a programming issue. If we go to ECU information, you're gonna notice that where it says VIN, look over here. Okay, there is software version, it's blank, and then VIN, you know, this is not the VIN of the bus. So we have to have the right equipment to write the VIN of the bus over here and put the right software version on this TCM, and then this is going to be fixed. Okay, so this being blank and us not having the correct VIN over here is what's causing the check transmission light to remain on the dash. Okay, so now I'm done. Okay, I am done. I'm gonna back out of here. I am going to find someone who can come program this for us, and after that we should be good. All right guys, so we checked the TCM after test driving the vehicle. There is no VIN number written in the TCM, it's blank, and we have some codes in it. This TCM has to be programmed. After we get it programmed, this is going to be good to go. I need to figure out who I can find that can program this TCM. After I get it programmed, I will bring you guys back up so we can do another test drive before we wrap up this video. I will get this TCM programmed and then I'll bring you guys back up. A couple of days later, I did some research and I found a company out in Baltimore, Maryland that can program our TCM for us. I reached out to them. The company is called Johnson and Tower. They told me that I can send the new TCM and the old TCM to them so they can program it. So I sent it to them, they programmed it. Now they sent it back. We have both TCMs back. We're now gonna install our new TCM to the vehicle. Now that it's programmed, we should be good to go. We won't have a buzzer on the dash anymore. the check transmission light should now be off, and this bus is going to be fixed. I'm going to install the TCM, and after that we're going to take this bus for a test drive before we wrap up this video. So we have both of our TCMs here, okay, from Johnson's and Tower. So here is the new TCM, and here is our old TCM. Okay, so now I'm going to install this back on the bus, and then I'll bring you guys back up. I have reinstalled the new TCM on the bus. So now let's take this bus for a test drive and see what happens. Remember, there was a buzzer that was going on when the engine was running, and there was a light over here that said check transmission. As you can see, that light went off. This light is on because we have the parking brakes applied right now. So there are no lights on the dash. So that's good. As you can see, no buzzing sound going on. So that's good. I still have my scan tool connected to the bus. We're gonna scan the TCM when we get back from our test drive. So this looks good so far. No buzzing noise, no lights on the dash. So now let's go for a test drive. I'm gonna release the parking brakes. So let's put this in drive and see what happens. Okay, so I like what I see. No lights on the dash. So the check transmission light was remaining on the dash because our TCM was not programmed. Okay, so let's test drive this and see what happens. So the transmission shifts well. So I'm doing 60 miles an hour right now. So this is good. This is fixed, guys. The bus shifts well. Everything feels good. So I'm going to turn around and drive back to the shop. And when I get back to the shop, I will bring you guys back up so we can wrap up this video. So I'm going to turn around and bring you guys back up when I get back to the shop. So see you guys at the shop. All right, so we are back at the shop. Now we're going to park our bus over here before we wrap up this video. Perfect, we are back at the shop. This is fixed. So as you can see, the bus is running. We test drove the bus. The check transmission light did not come back on. No buzzer on while the engine is running. So we're good to go. This is fixed. So now I'm gonna turn off the engine. So we're good. This bus is fixed. Before we wrap up this video, I wanna scan the TCM once again before we end this video. I'm gonna bring up my scan tool and then I'll bring you guys back up. The scan tool is done scanning all the control units on the bus. So we're gonna click on that check mark. So that's good. And now as you can see, our TCM, let's just focus on the TCM. Our TCM now is green and it has a check mark on it, which means our TCM is talking, okay? And there are no codes in it. So let's double click there. Okay, ECU was recognized, no error detected. You see that message there? Okay, click that check mark. Now we're gonna go into the TCM. Come here. Yeah, over here. Yeah, double click there. Okay, let's wait. And I'm sure there won't be any codes in the TCM. There are no fault codes in the TCM, so this is fixed, guys. We have made the right call. We test drove the bus. There are no lights on the dash. We're good to go. So this is fixed. So now let's wrap up this video. We're gonna leave this right over here. This bus is fixed. We did some tests. We determined that the TCM was defective. We replaced the TCM and now all is well. So thank you, Jonelle, for being here. Good job. Jonelle helped me to fix this bus. So I hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching. See you next time.